did actually, early in my career, in my 20s, I was interested in just going out into the landscape and photographing the raw wilderness. And after a while of doing that, and trying to do it differently, I wasn't trying to make postcards or anything like that, but I felt that somehow it didn't feel true to my time. So then I worked in industry, I worked in the car industry, I worked in the mining industries, and I had seen large-scale industries firsthand. And it occurred to me that there's no reason why I couldn't turn that into a kind of a project on the landscape, the man-altered landscape, versus looking at the pristine one. Here's one that's actually, there, and it's growing rapidly. And I thought the camera was the perfect way to begin to chronicle human expansion. So I started it 30 years ago, and apparently in the last 30 years we've expanded a lot. So it seems to have, caught on in the last decade with the zeitgeist of our time, where everybody's recognizing that something's happening. Our populations are becoming massive with 7 billion people. When I was born, there was 2.5 billion. So it took all of history to get it to 2.5 billion, and then in a short 50 years we've tripled in size. So there's a great change upon the planet, and I guess in some respects what I'm doing is bringing some awareness to the size of our footprint that's out there. I mean, it wasn't political, and I think there's a political component, but it wasn't like I went out as an environmentalist to indict industry or anything like that. It was never from that point of view. It was more, I would say it's more from a point of view that if I was sent down from outer space by another alien group, and they wanted to know what we're doing to the planet and bring back a bunch of photographs that show them how we're transforming the planet, I think these are the pictures I'd make. Probably an artist first, and the fact is that the environment is certainly at play, but I'm not a card-carrying environmentalist. I haven't strapped myself to any trees recently or anything like that. In that, I think that the role that I think myself as an artist can play, and by positioning the work as something to meditate upon, something to think about, something to have as an inflection point for a more interesting discussion about the human dimensions of how we engage with the planet as a species. So if my work can help be that kind of Rorschach test for what's your interpretation of this thing? Where do you see it? What do you see as a positive? Do you see it as a negative? How do you see that? And I think that encourages dialogue. That gets people to think and talk to each other versus throw stones at each other, which we've tried that for 30 years in the environmentalist movement, and it hasn't got us very far. Well, in the mining, I did work as a miner, so I actually had all the gear, and I knew the language, and I knew, how they thought and how they talked. I worked there long enough to kind of be able to, refer to all kinds of techniques that they use, and I was involved in blasting. I was involved in tramming the ores. I was a stoper's helper. So I knew all kind of the language of the whole industry. So when I went in there, they kind of saw me as familiar and someone who wouldn't kill himself in the location, and they would trust me often, even by myself, to drive out there and shoot it as I would. Or oftentimes even the general manager of the mine would go with me because he'd be interested in seeing how I interpreted the place that they work every day, and they never see it as an interesting thing for a photograph. So they're wondering, why would anybody be interested in this as a subject? That helped me develop a kind of rapport. I think the Bangladesh was an incredible sight to behold. For me, it was very much as if when I got there, I actually felt that this must be maybe like Dickens might have felt when he first saw the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution, and it's the satanic mills at their grittiest and dirtiest and most dangerous, and it was like a step back in 100 years, looking at how industrialization may have taken form at the early days, when there's no regard for human safety or proper outfitting of them with gloves and shoes and goggles and breathing apparatus when they're working with asbestos. So it was just like whatever, right? And I think Asia, there are parts of Asia where you can see that, where there's not the regard for human safety, and shipbreaking being probably one of the most dangerous of all of them, because they're dangerous things to take apart and they're full of toxics. So to me that was I had never witnessed anything like that before. That was a real eye-opener for me. I mean, to me it was really fascinating to see the building of the Three Gorges Dam, for instance. I've been there 3 times. I'm doing more work with dams. I think it's really these, larger than life, dams, these enterprises where we're, messing with things on a scale that I didn't, it's almost hard to imagine that, we small human beings can make things that big, It's a pretty remarkable thing to kind of bear witness to. So, I mean, China to me is full of those kinds of larger than life or beyond the imagination kinds of situations, because it's such an explosive growth and explosive population, and eager to move itself out of poverty, and in that kind of rush to a middle class, it's creating unprecedented events. I'm doing China and India. I think I'm kind of interested in doing water, and I don't think you can do a project like that without looking at China and India. I mean, to me, I believe, I did a project on oil, and now I'm doing a project on water, as I thought kind of made a natural follow-up to it, because those two liquids have huge dimensions to not just human impacts, but the planetary health. And so water in particular has both for security of a country, and for life. I mean, water equals life, and so if regions either despoil their water to the point where they can't recover it because it's too polluted, or if it's not enough, if they run out, drain the aquifers or whatever, then these are very serious concerns. I really started developing research on it in around 2006. I was finishing up the oil project, and I was already starting to accumulate knowledge and data on the water project. But shooting it'll be like 4 years, so it'll be like late 2012, But the oil project took me 12, to do it. So I'm doing it actually high speed in 4 years, and to try and get it. Because it's, I've been using 8x10, which 8-inch by 10-inch, and 4x5. But 4x5 was like, for China, was mostly 4x5. Great film medium, and loved working with it, but it's a lot of it's just running out. I can't get the materials anymore. I use it a bit, but it's the end of an era. I can sense. I still have a lab back in Toronto that we still process that film. But recently I've moved to a lot of aerial work, so digital is actually a better medium for that. I don't need to have the latest, but I want to have something that gives me the flexibility to work large, because when I think what's important with my work is to actually get a chance to see the originals, because that's all I'm working towards. I'm working towards the original print, to stand in front of the thing itself. Books and brochures and catalogs are all surrogate, and then TV and video and movies and all that are further surrogates to the work. You can't get a sense of what it is I'm doing until, I think, you get in front of the work. And when you get in front of the work, then you can maybe see why I spend so much time on making sure that every link in the chain is strong, and there are no weak links, so that everything I've done right to the finished product allows you to experience photography at its kind of finest, at its when everything's honed and put at its optimum. And that's every image I works to that kind of standard. No, I think it's just another tool. I mean, it's just like, used to use a manual typewriter, and you could be a great writer, and then all of a sudden word processing came in. Does that mean you're a better or worse writer? It might change your style a bit, and it might allow you to think differently, but I don't think it means, because I think it's about authoring. It's not about the tool. It's about what's the narrative, what's the story, how do you, what's the quality and the telling of the story? How well do you understand the subject? And that's not something that a tool gives you. That's something that understanding, reading, being knowledgeable, and having worked with your tool. What do they say? You need to work with a medium for anything, whether you're a violinist, for 10,000 hours before you become totally accomplished with it. So I think I've done my 10,000 hours. It's a long road. I mean, I think the tip would be, be informed, understand, yourself and your own intuitions and your own autobiography. I think, most great artists have at the core of their work, they're responding to something in their lives. I think it's more interesting to come out of a sense of autobiography and a sense of your own worldview than trying to chase something that's out there that you're trying to compete with. I mean, you may not be in the most trendiest kind of latest art fad, but I think chasing those fads is just that, they're fads, they come and they go. I think an art career is something that you build and you build with consciousness and carefully, and you follow your own vision in your own heart. I think that's where unique works and where interesting bodies of work come from, is those who have been true to their own kind of sense of self and sense of worldview, and so I think oftentimes youthful enthusiasm goes chasing after what the latest trend is in art and tries to make something that looks like that, but I don't necessarily think that that's the stuff that has staying power. It's the person that really thinks deeply and carefully about what they do and makes very careful works about that reflect their own 10 years from now or 20 years from now. When I started shooting, I kept thinking, how can I make images that would be interesting 50 years from now? And I look back and I have images from 30 years ago, and I just as happily put them on my wall today, and they're just as fresh today as they were 30 years ago. So I think I was getting it right. I think I was finding stuff that has a kind of, it has the potential to have staying power. Yeah, I was always just interested in being an artist. I kind of didn't want to be a commercial photographer. I didn't want to be a camera for hire, because it would tear me as to taking my creative skills and turning them to a kind of a business model. So I did everything but. And whenever I did take commissions, it would be things that I loved to shoot anyway, so I'm being paid to actually do what I want to do anyways, on top of doing it, because I would do it without being paid. So I had a pretty clear line that I didn't want to do commercial photography and my fine art photography. So I started a lab instead for the early years to keep me. So it's kind of, I refer to it as, as the kind of dilemma of the sailor. I want to go over there. I want to go in that direction, but I'm always tacking in opposite directions, trying to get there. So the idea is don't be afraid that you're going to a direction that isn't directly to where you're going, because that's pretty much standard. But just make sure you know where the point in the horizon you're aiming for is, and stick to that. And eventually you'll get there. But you're going to do some pretty circuitous zigzags getting there, and that's actually, that would be normal. It'd be unusual that you make a straight line to it. Happens, but that, if that happens, it's like you're a phenomena. You're like an art star phenomena, and you can flame out just as fast as you can. I think the nice progressive road is actually a healthier one, and a more meaningful one, because you kind of get there on your own steam and carefully and methodically and consciously.